Hello. It is 8:30. It is time for story time with Gina, and I am going to continue on Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project. And we're going to listen to a South Pole witness who was a contractor for Raytheon. Let me come over here and make sure I've got my live videos going on to see how we're doing. All right, we got it going, y'all. Let me make sure I got it going over here. I got my tablet setting up. Okay, hopefully this won't go out. Hello there, Lola Wara. We got it. We got it, you all. And I have got, hello, Applebrooks, honey. How's the sound on here? Does it sound all right? Yeah, hello, Sage. Hello, Carol. Frank Cooper. Jujby. Yeah. We can do it. Yes, Jesse James, honey. We're having a continuation unless you want to sit and listen to 3 whole hours all at once. I don't want to because I got a life to live. I got a life to live outside of this, but if we listen to it in little increments and break it down, it's easier to digest and listen to, and plus you get to comment like that. It's like that. See, it's perfect. Yeah, we got it. It's good. It's perfect, you all. Let me move myself. Let me shrink myself down. This is who is going to be starting off speaking, the Raytheon contractor at the South Pole. And so that's going to be really interesting. I hope there is no background noise or anything because I got this small air on up here. Good evening, Penny Davis, honey. Oh, yes, it is informative. Yes, we made it through another day. We did. Absolutely. Let me close this out. We got the live chat on. We're going to come on over to the Mr. Stephen Greer. First, I got to make sure I've got his...
Again, these...
Okay, yeah. We're going to go straight to Mr. Dr. Stephen Greer. So, we've got him up here. Yes, welcome everyone. We got it. We got him going on. We got him. Let's listen.
Men are courageous, and it's very emotional. And it should be. Should be. I'd like to introduce Eric Hecker. He's a Raytheon contractor based for about a year at the South Pole. He was involved in a neutrino light array. He has an enormous amount of information, but in the interest of time, we'll be brief. Thank you, Mr. Hecker.
Hello, everybody. Ladies, gentlemen, members of the press. I'm very happy that you're giving me this attention and this information attention because it needs to get out to the world. I will start, since we have to be brief. I have already given all pertinent information and supporting documentation to the Senate Intelligence Committee and ARROW. They informed me that all of my information will be recorded for public record and shared with Congress. It is that important. In 2010, I was selected to go down to the South Pole Station in Antarctica for an entire year by Raytheon Polar Services as an employee of a third-party contractor for the National Science Foundation. I function in a dual-role capacity as a tradesman and a firefighter. My responsibilities required me to be more informed than most of my crew and offered me complete access to the facilities. What I learned from this unique experience needs to be shared with the entire world. The technology at South Pole Station certainly can do what it is presented as its primary purposes, and unfortunately, much more. The Ice Cube neutrino detector is presented as a passive listening device for the purposes of the science.
Let me pause. Can you hear me? We actually did a video on this neutrino thing. Oh, it's been several months back, maybe last year, at this specific thing. And it was really, really cool, you all. Do you remember that? Penny Davis? Yeah, this is great. So this is covering what we've already done a video on, but it's more in depth. I love it.
As presented. But I'm going to skip right through the chase, folks. I have provided documentation that proves that the 5,160, what they call DOMs, that are embedded in the ice can actually transmit at 2,047 volts each. That gives us a long list of things to consider. It is effectively a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform that I will list rapidly a few things that it can do. Vehicle detection. We're learning that these off-world craft, on-world craft, ours or other nations, are also emitting neutrinos. So this makes the South Pole Station effectively an air traffic control station for this new level of equipment that nobody's discussing. In addition to the ability to detect neutrinos and the exotic vehicles, I have provided documentation that shows that this is also a system for faster than light communications. In the past, Gary McKinnon has hacked NASA, found the off-world fleet, the list of captains, and it's apparent that if we have faster than light vehicles moving throughout the system, we're going to need faster than light communications. This is that facility. Unfortunately, I have other bad news. The season that I was there, 2010 to 2011, we converted from construction to operations and maintenance in both the elevated station and the detector array. Unfortunately, when they first fired it up, that was when we had the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. There's 2 incidental shots before they were able to target it correctly. This is an earthquake generating device as well. This is the weapons of war that we have to deal with now and what Raytheon's hiding.
Thank you.
There's an ELF system at the South Pole Station, and when I arrived, I was told it was off, dismantled, and completely defunct. In my work, I will rapidly just tell you, I had to figure out the circuitry for certain other repairs, and I found that this system is in fact completely energized, up and running, and being utilized with the other systems for nefarious purposes as well. The Atmospheric Research Observatory is in what we call the clean air sector. I witnessed myself a very powerful green laser shooting out of the top of this facility into the cosmos. This, I believe, is a secondary form of long-range communications and or a defense system. I am not saying that we need to be scared of anything that's out there, but please understand the military-industrial complex is happy to invest all of your money in alleviating their fears. A question of power comes into play for all of these facilities that are present. I assure you, I knew what was going on, I knew the load demands of the facility, and all of these new items exceed the demand for the systems that I was presented. I am doing due diligence and research. I believe there's either a secondary power supply there that is either nuclear, that was there prior to the start of the Antarctic Treaty, which prohibits such things, and or that there is some sort of exotic power supply system there that just is not in the verbiage of the treaty, so it negates the responsibility to the parties involved. I think that pretty much covers it for time. If anybody wants to find out more, I have a website where all this information is at. For brevity, I'll wrap it up, but you can go to deciphering.tv. I've documented all this stuff, and information is available.
So that is this guy right here. He was a South Pole contract worker for Raytheon. And again, it was probably sometime last year that we did our own video on this very site about the neutrinos and everything like that. So we're going to listen to the rest of it. And if you remember, he said that he admitted that yes, it is used. That's when the Christchurch earthquake occurred. And it is. And you know, they signed an agreement, what was it, in 78, not to use like weather warfare or whatever type of weapons, but they just doesn't matter.
We are running a little over, and I apologize, but I think it's worth hearing as much as we can from these very courageous men. One of the things, if I had time, I would run through. We can go through very quickly. I think people in the military and in Congress and the American people need to know the difference between the man-made advanced technologies and how they look, and the extraterrestrial vehicles. We're going to run through a side-by-side. You can look and see ET, one on the left, seamless. It is actually created in a material science and technology we don't have time to go into, but we understand that, versus the man-made ones that have components, parts, wires, and what have you. Next. And again. Next. And again. And then you hear on the right, that is the Norton Air Force Base 1988 air show, classified. We have a witness who was in there, and these on the right are man-made. They were late Mercury era, out of 59 through early 60s in their construction, because we had mastered gravity control in October 1954. So these had been in the solar system by the time my uncle, who was north of Grumman, had worked on the lunar module out on Long Island to put Neil Armstrong on the moon. Next. This is again an ET vehicle. On the left, one with struts, parts, pipes, and often humming a transmission, sort of transformer sound on the right. Next. And again, one that's extraterrestrial, and a vague copycat that's man-made. Next. And again. And again. Next. Now the one on the right, this is a little bit to unpack. It takes a couple hours to go through it quickly. You can look up the Cash Landrum case back in 1980 outside Houston in Texas. The one on the right is actually an ET craft. It was being, they were unable to figure out how to get its energy system to work. They, I think rather foolishly, put a nuclear energy system on it. It malfunctioned. And as it did so, it radiated innocent people in their vehicle underneath it. It later was escorted by helos to a base west of there. The man who debriefed the 4 human pilots of this and debriefed them, we know, and we have his testimony. He's Air Force Office of Special Investigations out of Kirkland Air Force Base. So the Cash Landrum case involves civilian injuries. They tried to sue the government. The government denied they had any knowledge of it, but the constitutional government of the United States doesn't know this. This is the big problem. Next. And this, I want to just play this for a moment. We're in Washington. Here is an esteemed senator from Hawaii, and listen to what he said in the 1980s.
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
Free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself. Now, the media often wants to portray this issue, conspiracy people, and of course, at this point, if you disagree with someone anywhere, you just call them a conspiracy theorist. Okay? This man knew what he was talking about.
A shot.
Oops. So he absolutely knew what was going on with this. He was denied access, not just on the Iran-Contra issue, but on this specific issue. And how do we know that? We have an attorney, Derek Garcia here. He is now heading up the Disclosure Project Legal Defense Fund, and we have, as of about 2 hours ago, 90 plus attorneys and legal professionals to represent Disclosure Project witnesses and to pursue racketeering, influence, corrupt organization lawsuits against various corporations and individuals that are liable. The United States Congress and President need to act, but we will act pending their action. I'd like to then welcome Derek Garcia to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Derek Garcia. I'm a civil rights attorney from New Mexico. I've been in practice for 13 years. I'm admitted to practice in the District of New Mexico, the Federal District, the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, as well as the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm joined in the audience by my colleague and attorney Paige Fox from Illinois and numerous attorneys who have now joined our legal team nationwide and internationally. We are dedicated to ending decades of UFO secrecy and releasing vital technologies which will bring an end to our current environmental and energy crisis. On May 23rd, we announced the creation of the Disclosure Project legal team over Dr. Greer's YouTube channel. Since our initial announcement, we now have over 90 legally affiliated individuals, different practice areas and expertise, paralegals, law students, law clerks, members of law enforcement, and criminal investigators, legal professionals from over 23 states and nearly all relevant jurisdictions, and a growing list of preeminent attorneys internationally. We continue to make the call for pro bono attorneys, all volunteer at this point, and legal professionals, and add new members of the Disclosure Project legal team on an hourly basis. We have assembled a one-of-kind and strictly non-partisan volunteer legal team for the purpose of moving disclosure forward once and for all.
Look at all these things they're guilty of. The Disclosure Project witnesses and gathered intelligence has established the following major crimes: treason against the United States, murder, mass murder, torture, kidnapping and abduction, embezzlement of government funds, embezzlement of private funds, bank fraud, money laundering, illegal surveillance, insubordination and insurrection against the United States, false imprisonment, witness and whistleblower intimidation, theft of intellectual property, trespassing, burglary, framing of innocent people, government corruption, blackmail, bribery, illegal use of government and military property, and many more.
Our goals are to legitimize the essentially TAVOs and promote public awareness as to the numerous related constitutional and legal implications on this issue. We wish to support the constitutional government in regaining full operational control over these secret, illegal, black budget, beyond black budget projects. And we will gain control over this issue for the first time since President Eisenhower. We will seek truth about propulsion and advanced energy technologies capable of solving world hunger, poverty, and the energy crisis. We will seek justice for those who have been harmed by non-disclosure and technology seizure through filing civil RICO actions, Bivens claims, and numerous and multiple legal theories aimed at getting to the ultimate truth on this issue. The competent, under oath testimony already developed by the Disclosure Project team, Dr. Greer, and these courageous witnesses, and represented in the Disclosure Project intelligence archives developed over 30 years of Dr. Greer's work, may also be used in criminal prosecutions by United States attorneys or criminal prosecutors across the globe to seek indictments on the numerous RICO crimes which have been committed on this issue, with the aim of keeping the issue buried. Just a small sample, and I know we're short for time, of the crimes that are directly related to this issue. Disclosure Project witnesses and gathered intelligence has established the following major crimes: treason against the United States of America, murder, mass murder, torture, kidnapping and abduction, embezzlement of government funds, embezzlement of private funds, bank fraud, money laundering, illegal surveillance, insubordination and insurrection against the United States, false imprisonment, witness and whistleblower intimidation, theft of intellectual property, trespassing, burglary, framing of innocent people, government corruption, blackmail, bribery, and illegal use of the government and military property, and many, many more crimes. We hoped to support the civilian government, criminal prosecutors. Any evidence that we develop and continue to develop can be used for that purpose. My personal experience in coming to this issue was as a young intern for Senators Bingaman and Domenici in the summer of 2001 on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The Disclosure Project press conference had just taken place on May 9th of 2001. During my internship, I distributed numerous copies of the Disclosure Project executive summary and briefing document and other written materials to various members of Congress and their staff, including direct submissions to leading members of the Senate in the underground subway system. Waiting in the hallway of the Hart Senate office building, I encountered a hero of our country, Senator Daniel Inouye, walking back from his office. I gave the senator a copy of the Disclosure Project executive summary and asked him if he had heard about the Disclosure Project and what he thought of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and the possibility of these intelligences actually visiting Earth. Senator Inouye responded by hand signaling me to follow him back to his private office. He shut the door of his private office. Senator Inouye said he dealt with the UFO issue extensively while he was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee in 1976. Senator Inouye confirmed that he had seen the May 9th, 2001 Disclosure Project press conference here at the National Press Club, and that the testimony provided by those courageous witnesses at the time was substantially accurate and correct, based on his direct experience and briefings on the subject. Senator Inouye confirmed that many UFOs and projects related to such represented genuine extraterrestrial vehicles, and that this issue, as portrayed by Dr. Stephen Greer and the 2001 Disclosure Project witnesses, was real, genuine, and absolutely not a hoax. I asked Senator Inouye if it was true that a secret, unacknowledged entity or control group operating illegally inside the United States government, internationally, and/or within the private sector among defense contractors and corporations had direct operational control of the UFO ETV issue. Senator Inouye confirmed his statement that there exists a shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances and free from the law itself, as stated during the Iran-Contra hearings in 1987. I asked whether he was exaggerating when he made this statement. I asked if perhaps he was speaking of another government. I asked many questions that day, but he looked to me and he told me directly that he was not exaggerating, that the illegal shadow government did exist at the time he made his statement in 1987 and continued to exist in 2001 during our conversation, and that the entity had thus far escaped complete scrutiny, control, and oversight by the legally authorized and constitutional government of the United States. Further corroborating documents and details to my personal testimony on this issue is available in a signed affidavit that I have executed concerning what Senator Inouye told me directly. For members in the media, I can definitely get you an electronic copy. We encourage you to join our legal team by visiting our YouTube channel or the disclosure.legal@gmail.com. And we thank you and all those in our nation and worldwide who have volunteered their legal talents so far as we continue to develop a strategy and approach that will stand the test of time. Show up, suit up, stand up for the future of your country and for your world. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so excellent. I just loved every moment of it. I did. I know you all did too. I loved it. It was perfect. Perfect. That's right. We're right on track, you all.
So I would like to thank very sincerely Mr. Garcia for his work. When he first contacted me, he was a 20-year-old student at Wesleyan. Now he's the age of a couple of my daughters. He's now an attorney, and we've gone full cycle. where now he is stepping up with all these other wonderful attorneys and legal professionals to represent what we were doing pro bono, since we are at present an unfunded operation. I would like to also just quickly go through, we're not going to have time to go through everything here, but there is a history of hearings on this subject going back many decades. You know, we have a Blue Book, Robertson Report, the Gerald Ford hearings, the Condon Report, and etc. These have all been, unfortunately, submarined and corrupted by influences that have prevented the truth of this coming out. We have to be very careful, because Eisenhower said only an informed citizenry can prevent the loss of our freedoms and democracy. I would like to acknowledge how important, let's go through these signatures, the 16 members next of the Senate who have written for the Pentagon to pick up its pace and further fund the investigations. But they have to have watchdog, external folks looking at that. That's what the Disclosure Project has to do. The also chairs and co-chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee have written to Arrow with concerns about the feedback. There are people I know who have been through the Arrow office and the SCIF, and they have contacted me explicitly saying that some of their information is not getting back to the members properly. This cannot happen. The Congress has passed a law. The Pentagon and this office must comply, and the people of the United States must insist that they comply with the law that has been passed. Next. We won't have time to go into this in depth. I just want to mention, I want to be extremely careful what I'm about to say, because it will be misconstrued by various folks out there. There are civilizations extremely advanced that are concerned with what we're doing. This station at the South Pole is a much later version of a man that I worked with for a number of years in the 90s who invented the neutrino light detector system on the satellites up in space. He knew then that these were being used, and this was in the 70s, to track, target, and destroy extraterrestrial assets in space and also around the Earth. Now, these civilizations, given their extremely advanced state, had they wished to punch back, they would have. However, they are inordinately peaceful, they are organized in a group, and we need to come forward as a people instead of looking at everything as a military threat and see that there's an opportunity here, and there has to be diplomacy and science and disclosure of the truth in order to avoid a catastrophe. My understanding is the technologies that are in these covert programs have become so advanced that at some point they could be a threat to these other worlds. As such, it puts our entire planet at risk because of the unchecked power and technology of the illegal secret government projects. This is a much graver national security threat than China, Russia, Iran, or anything the news media is currently covering. Next. I want to give you a call to action. All of you listening, the citizens of the world, not just the United States. If you know someone who is a government contractor, a government employee, military, what have you, who has information on this, please have them contact us at this email address. Please write your members of Congress. We live in a democracy still. You should write to your 2 senators and your representative and the President of the United States, expressing your concern and calling for open hearings. We need to network with our friends and families and get them to support this effort. You need, if you can, to contribute to our effort. I'm retired as a doctor, so, I can't fund everything at this point like I had. If you can assist with the Energy Research Lab that we are proposing in the Lost Century, you'll see that, then please contact us. We have a $50 million funding need to stand up a open source energy lab. What does that mean? We would develop these zero-point energy technologies, and they would be released free of charge, open source, to the entire world, so we can quickly solve the environmental and poverty problems we are facing.
They're really working on this open source stuff right now, and you can find that through the technology that's out there. I'm not going to say anything else.
Our goal is to acquire or develop a zero-point quantum vacuum system no later than 2026. That's very fast. So we need your help. If you're a scientist who knows these technologies or in other capacities can help us, hoping we get funding, we will call on you to be part of this multi-centered lab. In other words, we would have this lab streamed continuously. All breakthroughs would be blockchain distributed in real time, and there would be other affiliated labs around the world working on this, so it could not be invaded and shut.
That's true. What he speaks of, it is the blockchain. And they already have open source things that cannot be shut down. They're decentralized. But someone don't like the decentralized things.
Down in one place. Next. And in wrapping up, I'd like to share something that I learned from Colonel Philip Corso prior to his death, when I was involved, and he came forward, as you all know, wrote the day after Roswell. He had been involved in some of the technology transfer, and he had an experience out at the White Sands missile range back in the 50s. Pretty sure it was 1956, but I don't quote me on that. And he was a colonel. He was involved in these projects. There was an ET craft that came in daytime and came down over the range. He went out there with a couple of his guys. And this craft, it would be three-dimensional and then vanish like a heat wave, like Stephen Digna explained, and then back again. Finally, it stayed. There was an ET that emerged, extraterrestrial biological entity, and he said the ET was communicating, please don't hit us with these radar. Can you get these radar systems out? And we're asking, because they were operational, of course, at that time they were operational at Roswell. And being a brash young, Air Force colonel, and he says, "What's in it for me?" And the ET says, "A new world if you can take it." Now, I was one. Now, I have 12 grandchildren. What kind of world are we going to leave them if we don't fix this problem? Because it involves peace, and we have to work towards contact that is in a peaceful paradigm. We've launched a very controversial project, as I get attacked the most for, the CE5, or Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, contact program, as sort of an experimental, community-based outreach to these civilizations. We have had a number of extraordinary contact experiences. This is sort of a prototype that the French government during the presidency of Sarkozy asked us to demonstrate, and we set an operation in France that was protected, where we did have events take place. I think we have to begin to ask, what can we do as a civilian government where we don't try to militarize and weaponize everything we don't understand? Because here's the problem. If you're a hammer, the whole world's a nail. And so we have to get this disclosed properly so that our brighter scientists, our academics, our political leadership, and our diplomats and the citizens can take the lead on this issue, rather than an illegal and clandestine operation that is a threat to national and world security. Thank you for your attention. Now, I am told we have to be out of here at 5. We've gone over about an hour, and I apologize for that. But if there are any members of the press here that have a question, you can ask them, and we'll be happy to answer them briefly. Any members of the media? Yes. He's asking about our safety. Look, if I was worried about my safety, I would have never walked on down this path. I have been threatened, and we've had some losses on our team. I've had a few people over the years that worked with me who have been killed. It's difficult. But I just think the mission of what we're trying to do is more important than one life, mine. So you can't worry about that. We do have good security now, and I think that there are people, frankly, in these very classified projects who do want to help us and protect us, and they have been since about 1998. And that's pretty much. Or is there another? Oh, you're welcome. Yes, he's asking about my comment about gravity control being accomplished in October 1954. A member of my team for many years was the top scientist at the Naval Research Labs here in Washington, so one of the major Department of Defense labs. He was one step down after the director of the lab, and he had been in a vault where he saw the document in a skiff and saw the documentation that we had mastered gravity control, meaning that we had had experimentation with it earlier, but mastering it so it was stable occurred in October of 1954. His name is Richard Foch, F-O-C-H. He is deceased, but he worked with us for many years and was very much in the inside. He also introduced me to some folks down near the Redstone Arsenal, and a man who is under contract with IT&T, but he actually is working for the CIA, and he has developed these technologies also beginning in the 70s. And I've been at this man's skiff, he's been at my home. When he was going to develop one of these systems for us, some thugs went down and threatened he and his wife's life. So, you know, he had to back down. At that time, we didn't have a momentum and a way to secure his safety. So yes, I mean, we do know that this goes back a long time. I know that we have Senator John Warner's son here, who his father was involved with this committee. It's the majority Joint Intelligence Committee, along with George H.W. Bush, who was the one who told Clinton to back down off of looking into this. And I was very involved with that. There's a long story here. We'd be here all night. But we do know that Paul Mellon, the grandfather of John Warner IV, who is here today, went over and retrieved a German disc at the end of World War II that was their prototype to develop a so-called anti-gravity electromagnetic gravitic system, but it wasn't fully operational by the time the war ended. But that became something that then was pursued later through operations that were highly classified in the United States and in the very black aerospace world. And we have this very well documented, by the way. This is a great deal of history here of the United States and after World War II that the public doesn't know about, but it'll come out. Other questions?
Hello. I think it's important to hear what is being said. That way you can come to your own conclusion and digest everything that you've heard. And I'm just going to play it. It's 30 minutes. I don't want to drag just a video just for the questions. So I just want to leave the questions in here. There's a lot of information that came out, a lot of acknowledgments about what has been happening, man-made and regular, not of this world. Yeah, hello. Yeah. So we're going to look at it. if you don't want to watch it, it's got 30 minutes left, more or less, of the question and answer. Feel free to step out because the bulk of the information was at the beginning, but he does give a certain time stamp toward the end of this video about something.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Greer, Sherry Hill here from the Raytheon.
Mhm.
And I just want to thank you so much for your bravery in covering what many of us journalists in the truth movement see as being the alarm for the most critical topic on the planet right now. And, we've really learned that we the people that we've been funding, unbeknownst to us with our taxpayer money, these black operations. What can you tell us that we can do? I know you had a call to action, but for not just the journalists, but everyone in this room and everyone tuning in, what can we do to help support and really flip this movement right now and help save, our planet, humanity, have access to the free energy that we have been funding as well?
Well, we need networking support. We need people like Sean Ryan, who had me on his show and got this message out to so many members of the military, Delta Force guys, Navy SEALs, others, and are now coming forward. We need significant funding because it's an unfunded project. Everyone who works with it is a volunteer, has been for 33 years. But I also think that we need people to network with friends, and it needs to be a grassroots movement of the people. And people need to also take the action I mentioned with their members of Congress. Most importantly, I think everyone who knows the truth about this needs to work night and day. This is what I did. I basically gave up about $12 million in earnings as a doctor to do this. But my view of it is that we need people who understand what's at stake and walk the talk. And it needs to go beyond just gab. And we need action. And I think the timeline for it is now. This is all emerging. I just heard from a very important figure in Australia this morning. He said the defense sector there is following this. There are multiple people there going to come forward. There's a big asset base there near Pine Gap. And the members of the Australian Senate are also open to pursuing this. So this needs to be a worldwide effort, not just the United States. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Upon staring here, Greer Disclosure,
Mhm.
I'm just curious to know if the witness was that you were earlier with the direct consequences
Yes, all of this is available, assuming we can get it to you. That can be emailed to you, the redacted one. Obviously, the unredacted one is very sensitive. I'm not going to disclose the names of the hundreds of men and women who want to not be disclosed publicly. Now, it's very courageous of these guys to do it. I know what it's like to be put in the crosshairs of this subject and ridiculed and defamed for 30 years. So these are very courageous people, but that list you can actually receive as well as the entire facilities list. Now, the facilities list just gives you a location, doesn't tell you quite everything that's there. It gives you a little bit of a little blurb. But it's what we can provide at this point. Again, remember, any requests like this are being fulfilled by volunteers who have day jobs and lives. So be patient with your request and please communicate that to our staff or email address that I provided. Yes, other? Yes?
Who are these C-suite entities inside SG, just so we can be aware?
The illegal secret government. Well, look, I know a number. I've actually met with a few of them over the years. He's deceased now, General Stubblebine, offered me $2 billion not to do what I'm doing in 1992. There were witnesses to this. The level of corruption is almost unbelievable. We do have a man who's this former chairman of a major Fortune 100 company who wants to come forward, but he and his family have been threatened in the last month. So I've had these conversations, and this man, by the way, confirms that corporation has free energy. He regrets what he's done. He is retired, and he would love to see this come forward for his children and grandchildren. He's a decade or more older than me. So at this point, the ones who are not wanting to be named, I don't name. However, if there's a proper investigation out of the White House and the Senate, we will name them, and if they need to be subpoenaed, they will be subpoenaed. But I mean, this is a process where I don't want to burn bridges to people who are actually sympathetic to what we're doing, but we have not provided enough protection, including immunity from seizure of their assets. This gentleman has several $100 million. He doesn't want to have that confiscated. He doesn't want his family threatened. And so it's a complicated issue. It's not that he's blurting out a bunch of names. Other folks who have been named on this group are Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, who is still living, and other folks. So I think he was Director of National Security Agency, Deputy Director of CIA, and moved over to Science Applications International Corporation. We know which corporations are involved. We know where many of their plants are and bases are. And I think those have to be put under the control of the President and the Congress immediately. And I think that's more important than, you know, the personalities involved. But ultimately it does come down to people. All of it comes down to people. And I think we need to have a number of those folks who are now out of their positions, out of the C-suite, step forward. But we need, so I keep emphasizing this, clear protections for them, because this is no laughing matter. I mean, when you've heard what happens, and many of these were people who incidentally came across this, and it destroyed their lives. Imagine if you were read in for 20 years. I mean, there are wet works of kill teams that will be deployed. And so this is very, very serious. It needs to be taken seriously, and I will not be, you know, too cavalier about what I'm going to require for those folks who do want to do the right thing. Now, the ones who don't want to do the right thing, I said this, we put a clock on it. The Congress and the President puts a clock on that, and then at that point, they get prosecuted. Or, by any means necessary, this gets resolved.
By any means necessary, this gets resolved. They'll be prosecuted, or by any means necessary, this will get resolved.
Yes,
Dr. Greer, can you give any, I'm over here,
I see, yeah.
Gavin McClellan.
Sorry,
Can you
Mike.
give any clarification on the Van Allen radiation belts? There's a lot of dissension about the Van Allen radiation belts. Give any clarification on transportation through them?
No, I don't have any specific information on that issue. I do know that these technologies that we're talking about would have no problem going through, frankly, solid matter, ocean, etc. Is there another member of the media press?
Wait for the mic, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Greer, can you tell us more about the program life forms that are involved in the so-called abduction phenomenon, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
well, those, you know, they've been around for a very long time. As you know from our Air Force Office of Special Investigations witness who appeared in Unacknowledged, that document in 2017, in the early days, and I actually have met with people on the tactical teams from the good old days where they would have people who were short, who looked whatever, and there was stagecraft like a Disney set, and they would be on these electrogravitic devices using various chemicals and what have you to abduct people. The purpose for that is to present a false threat from space. This is what Werner von Braun, who invented the rocket for the Germany in World War II, told Carol Rosin on his deathbed and begged her to try to prevent the weaponization of space, and etc. He knew this was going on in 1974 when he made that warning, and you can see her testimony in the Disclosure Project website on YouTube. However, it evolved from that point to where they have very sophisticated robotic objects and beings that look exactly like a gray or this or that, and I've met with multiple people who have constructed them, operated them, or been victims of them who are military. Mr. Digna was actually abducted and taken into this craft through technologies that sounds like science fiction. But remember what Ben Rich told my friend James Goodall, who is here, is an aerospace historian, right before he died, and he said, anything you can imagine that they've done on Star Trek is out in the desert. He's not talking about Area 51, he's talking about the Lockheed assets. And we've already done it, we have it, it exists, and we've either used it or decided not to use it. He also wrote the reply to one of his friends that Mr. Schratt obtained, where the man said, do you think UFOs exist, and are they extraterrestrial or ours? He said they are both. And that is from the director and the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, Ben Rich, legendary. So I always tell people, we have all this in the archive. Please don't just take my word for it. Never had a clearance, never been in the government. I'm an emergency doctor doing this to help the future of our planet. But we have all the information that proves every bit of this. And under oath, these courageous men and hundreds of others will tell the truth. Yes? I couldn't understand the question.
U.S. sovereignty, is it threatened because of the shadow government and other forces?
I will tell you that effectively the constitutional government of the United States, at least in this area, has been nullified since about the late 1950s. And we have tracked this. It's a huge problem. Senator Inouye knew it. Now, in other regards, it's business as usual. But remember, this organization is transnational, operates globally with alacrity, as I mentioned. And so this is not just a U.S. problem, it's a global problem, but the center of gravity of it is here in the United States. Other questions before we need to move?
Cassandra Joan Butler from Pathfinder News. Dr. Greer, thank you. This has been mind-blowing, but are there international groups such as yourself, similar to Disclosure Project across the globe? Are there networking with other like minds?
Well, yes, we have people involved with what we're doing in various other countries, including Russia in their space program and other places. We recently obtained the testimony of a Russian general that back in the Soviet era, where an extraterrestrial vehicle and beings put some of the people at an intercontinental ballistic missile site kind of in stasis so they could go in and fix an overheating missile that wasn't being detected that could have blown up and could have triggered World War III. Now, I'll tell you, there are a number of incidences that involve nuclear sites, weapon storage areas, etc., where there have been, and power plants, where there have been ET craft, because there's energy being given off from those systems that are beyond the electromagnetic pulse spectrum that Dr. Zohari, who was here this weekend, who's a physicist, described in the scalar range. So I think that the interstellar civilizations, these extraterrestrial civilizations, have a profound concern because those could be a threat to them, those energy forms, but they know it's a threat existential to the Earth. I actually honestly believe these civilizations regard the Earth as precious, that humanity is filled with promise, and I think they have been trying to warn us and keep us from going down the path of either geophysical disaster or war that would be using these sort of weapons. The most dangerous weapons are unacknowledged. They're not the nuclear ones. They're the ones that Mr. Hecker is talking about and others, and we have a great deal of information on that. I have folks who work for the NSA and also Raytheon who have used some of those in horrific ways to trigger deliberately earthquakes and other problems. So this is something that is very serious and it has to be gotten under control. And I say that these projects need to get under supervision and control by some sane folks who aren't sociopaths. It has to happen fairly quickly at this point. Yes. And hello? Oh.
Billy Carson, Forbidden Knowledge TV.
Hey there, coming in loud and clear, buddy.
I'm in. With regards to the civilian RICO, can we foresee if this process is successful any potential prison time for any of these corporate execs that are behind this?
Look, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. I think what we want to do first is to gain their cooperation with the effort. We hope we can exert enough pressure both through what we're doing as civilians, through a civilian RICO and other actions, as well as what's happening in the Congress, that gets resolved. What you don't want to do is just throw down with folks who have technologies. And I'll tell you, this is sensitive, but when I was briefing Admiral Tom Wilson, who was the head of Intelligence Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1997, 26 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long, at the end I asked him, we need your help to get these projects under proper control. And he says, well, does the Secretary of Defense, I can't do it without his, and he's not giving me that order. He says, what about the President? I said, no, the President has been waved off. This is Bill Clinton, and I know exactly how that happened. Because I was very involved with Lawrence Rockefeller and all the Clinton issue. So the question becomes very quickly, and he said to me, how would we take on a group who have technologies 1,000 years beyond what I know we have, which is the best thing I can deploy is a B-2 stealth bomber. So this is a very serious issue strategically. How do you approach this? Now, the constitutional government of the United States has the rule of law, and I think it is disclosed properly, the support of the populace and the people, and the rank and file. And I want to point out, virtually all of the Disclosure Project witnesses, except some of these few that are very much at the top, were just obeying orders. They were at a site, they were Delta Force or Navy SEAL or what have you. They didn't know that the management of it had escaped constitutional control. And I didn't know that until 1993. And that was, of course, my coming of age when I realized, my God, the President and the Director of the CIA are being denied access, and then multiple senators and congressmen that I met with privately. So I think that what we want to do is resolve this in a peaceful, legal fashion, and we do not want to just go straight to, DEFCON 1, right? We don't want to go to that. So I think we need to do that, and then
If you can hang on for 10 more minutes, I know it's hard. I'm trying to stay awake. I really am, and just trying to be unemotionalist and just listen and watch and read and sense. Just 10 more minutes, because he's going to give the time stamp.
6 months, however. The information I have, I don't want to go further than that, is that a clock has been placed on this. It must be resolved within this year, early next year, and then things are going to deteriorate significantly.
Excuse me, what did he just say? So we got 251.15, 251.13. Okay, let's listen, Gina, honey. Quit talking.
Straight to, DEFCON 1, right? We don't want to go to that. So I think we need to do that in the next 6 months, however. The information I have, I don't want to go further than that, is that a clock has been placed on this. It must be resolved within this year, early next year, and then things are going to deteriorate significantly.
Because there's going to be a catastrophic mutating event that will occur within 2 years as of February of 2023, according to the WEF. So he just told you.
I don't want to really go into, let them speak for themselves. When I take meetings, I take them, if they're confidential, they're confidential. I'm not important in this, it's not supporting me. I'm 68. I was 34 when I started on this path of double my age. I'm not going to live another 30 years probably. So, my point is I want to be a means to get the intelligence, the information, put the coalition together to move this forward. And I think it's going to need, but the members of Congress who have come forward about this already, such as Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, who has called for these open hearings. He's on the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee. There are many members of Congress who are awakening to this problem. The issue is they're moving much too slowly. You need to contact these members of Congress and also the White House and the Office of the President and say this needs to be dealt with expeditiously because they now have in their possession the entire Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. And what I have to say about that is no more excuses. No more excuses. They have everything they need.
He said things will deteriorate. Will.
Dr. Greer, as a special operations, back over here, your left. There you go.
There you are.
Yeah. First and foremost, thank you for everything you do. We appreciate that. My name is Justin Wilson. I'm a former special operations operator, and I currently own a media company called Praetorian. Two-part question. The first one being, is there no hostility from another species because there's a higher governing species, or is it just the fact that there is no hostility whatsoever? How can we be sure of that? First question.
Everybody who I know who has dealt directly with those beings have told me our own experience, and that is they are completely non-hostile. They have been portrayed as such because how do you unite the world around a military response? You create a false alien threat. This is what Werner von Braun warned about, and we are very much at that point, unfortunately. So I think that calmer minds need to prevail, but there's no evidence they are hostile. Now let me make one other point. As I said one time to a general, I won't say who it is, because if they were hostile, and given the galactically foolish things we have done, targeting them, striking them, now these systems that are faster than the speed of light, moving out into space, the technologies they have in a fraction of a second could shut down all those systems and everything else. They have not. Why have they not done that? Because they are essentially very peaceful, highly organized, socially evolved, psychologically and emotionally evolved civilizations. One other point, common sense. If you possess those sort of weapons and you're still of the consciousness of violence, you're going to blow yourself up or some nearby planet with you. Because we're not talking about, let's forget science fiction. You're not talking about boom, boom with a laser beam, right? Or a kinetic missile, or even a thermonuclear missile. You're talking to be able to affect the fabric of space-time. And then if those technologies are weaponized, it's over in a fraction of a second. So the proof, I said to one senior military guy, that they are not hostile is that you and I are still breathing the free air of Earth. If you know what we've been doing, it's quite clear that this is actually proof that they're not hostile. If you understand what those technologies are, and if you understand what covert illegal projects have been doing.
So here's a question. If there's not any, intervention by the aliens or the people, there is this power and there's people in control. If we don't fix this ourselves, is there going to be any kind of intervention from up there if we continue to destroy the Earth as we are?
Well, that's what I spoke to a moment ago. I think that there are two clocks ticking. One is operations within the constitutional government of the United States that are not going to put up with this any further, more than another 6 to 9 months. The other is the fact that these extraterrestrial civilizations cannot afford for this progression of technology being deployed against them. These have been much of it's been reverse engineered from the ET vehicles, right? And so at a certain point, where do they have to do something to protect other places? Because there's a universal principle of self-defense. So far, we've just been cruising along, getting away with this foolish and childish behavior. But I can't give you a timeline on that, but I think that, I honestly, from what I've heard from very senior intelligence sources inside the so-called illegal operations, is that it's thought that it would not be able to go on beyond 2026. So maybe within 3 years. Yes. Well, I think that at first there's denial, shock. It's like the stages of death, frankly. But I know the people that I've been with in the last year and a half and providing this information, which they've then confirmed, it has been an existential crisis for them psychologically, organizationally, etc. I won't say who I've been doing this with, but it is traumatic. One of the chief folks, he started working with us on this. He asked me to give them everything we had. I did. Very senior intelligence person. And, he had 2 Black Hawks over his house, shaking his house with his kids in it the next day, with just hovering there. Very threatening. This is a very courageous man, a hero of the country who is unnamed. But what I'm saying is that it's going to be a process because there's so much to know, and it's so shocking. And I think most people in the media and in government cannot believe what Senator Inouye knew in 1987 and confirmed to Mr. Garcia in 2001. And I think that you want to sort of go into denial, this just can't be. I did have someone years ago who was a member of the Canadian military say, this is the hottest potato in the universe. Nobody wants to deal with it. And this is another problem. It's easier just to go, this is too difficult, too dangerous. I'm just going to pay attention to what the next tax bill is or whatever it is. And I understand that. I mean, honestly, I sometimes wish I'd never found out what I did about this issue. I got kind of dragged into getting involved at this level, and I never thought I would have to. In my naivete as a young doctor, I thought, well, you tell the right people this, you provide the evidence, and they fix it. But, and they should have. They should have. But I think at this point, it just becomes very difficult for them. And that this is why what we're trying to do, if we can get some help from guys here and listening, is that we need somebody who's a very good data scientist and data file person to take this entire archive, finish it. Only part of it's been scanned in. We have an enormous amount yet to do. And so it can be organized, and then I would do briefing modules, maybe, I don't know, a dozen, 20 of them, that would connect all that evidence and testimony into intelligence assessments. Now, I've done a number of these. Back in the day, I provided intelligence assessments to folks because ultimately the comprehensive assessment based on multiple terabytes of data, hundreds of witness testimonies, thousands of government documents, that has to be put together in something sensible. But that's a very heavy lift, by the way. But I think that's what we need to do so that if you're the national security advisor or the president or chairman of a committee or the members, that they can go from understanding it in a methodical way because it's so much to unpack and it's so overwhelming. But that's just something I haven't had time to do. On my free time, we'll work on it together. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. I understand your proposition of benevolence. I'd like to follow up a little bit what the gentleman over there said about hostile intention, one of the intention of our EBs.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had any information or relate to you towards genetic manipulation of the species that had been ongoing or previously talked about, which would, of course, construe a national security threat to the Republic? Has any of that ever come your way?
Well, I've certainly heard about it, but what I've heard is the reverse. That our classified projects have taken genetic material and altered it for various purposes, including cloning projects and these program life forms. So in reality, it's probably flown the other way from the folks I've heard. Look, I've been told we have to be out of here at 5. I thank you for your patience. I know we went over about an hour, but help us if you can, and God bless all of you. We'll see you soon.
So, there's no way I could sit for 3 hours and watch something like this. It would have to be really, really entertaining, like Lord of the Rings or something like that. That's why it's in segments. It was hard to listen to the last 30 minutes of it, you all. I admit it. It's made me tired. It's strained me, but he gave some clues. That's why it's important to listen to what is being said and push throughout. It's going all throughout YouTube and other social media things, but I don't know if you're hearing about it on the news or anything, but there is that catastrophic mutating event that is going to occur within 2 years that will change our very life, and we may not have the control over it that we do now. We won't. So there's probably no stopping it. But there's a lot of information, and I'm glad they're getting it out. We'll take what we can get, you all. We will, and we'll be happy, and we will not complain. And you take what you want and leave what you don't want. That's right. You just got to sift through it. Sift through the information, and I am going to go. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Applebrooks Honey. Oh, Ryder, if there's any other moderators on here, thank you. Thank you for all the new people who have joined this channel. Thank you for all the subscribers. And, yeah. William Goswick, what do you think's going on? They compared it, they compared it to imagine a cyber virus. Imagine a virus, how it mutates. Something like that. And yeah, we have done several videos on this. We have on this channel. And time's going to tell all things. You gotta stay strong on the inside, ever alert. At least we got this video done. I don't know if I listened to the very, very, very beginning when he was introducing, but that's okay. You all, you go do that yourself, because I'm not listening to no more. We're not going to do no more videos on this disclosure project. You can go look at the very front part if I didn't do it. Yeah, that's great. We got it. We got it, you all. We do. So I'm getting off of here. It's 9:41. So with that being said, thank you. And this is going to go into this podcast, is where it's going to go. Storytime with Gina podcast. As soon as I push this button, I'll go over there and put it in there. That way it would already be in there. With that being said, hello, wherever you are in any part of the world. Hello. From my heart to yours, love you. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. We got no later than 2026. That's what he said. Then it's going to get